Hello again. So we are back at Wycombe Air Park, or Booker Airfield as it's also known. Echo Golf Tango Bravo is the ICAO code for Wycombe Air Park. And we are going to perform another couple of circuits. So practice, practice, practice. Practice makes perfect. The reason we are back doing this is because after a bit of research and following some feedback, it turns out I was actually flying the runway 06 circuit, which cuts between Lane End and Freeth, and the runway 24 circuit actually extends out to the southwest a bit further, so it goes round the edge of Freeth and Little Freeth, and then along the Fingist Road back towards Bolter End and onto West Wycombe. So we're going to follow the route. So basically you take off a runway 24, and then when you get to the edge of the airfield you turn left to 230 degrees, and then you fly out until you can see that Freeth is off of your right wing, and you turn to, there's actually an obelisk in the distance that you can see. You can fly towards that and the main road. You see, obviously you can see the main road as well, lined off in the distance. So you can use that as a guide. And then you fly along here until there's some visual references we can use on the ground down here, and we can turn then to 60 degrees, fly in towards West Wycombe, turn around to 150 degrees, and then round to 240 to land. So we're going to do the circuit a couple of times. So it's interesting some of the feedback I've had. If we just put this camera around here while we're talking. So I've had some feedback from people saying that obviously some parts of the world they train patterns in relation to the airfield. This is a bit of an odd airfield in that regard. It has a very specific circuit with very specific visual reference points. So you really can't do it relative to the airfield because you're going so far away from the airfield on the circuit. So it combines a lot of different skills into doing the circuit here versus doing a standard pattern around an airfield where you're looking over your shoulder, you know, at kind of your 5 o'clock to see where the airfield is. Anyway, let's go and do this runway 24 pattern and see how we get on. So we are going to fold some more learnings in about the aircraft and how to operate it correctly. So we've got a long enough runway here, we don't need flaps on takeoff. We're also going to leave the fuel mixture on rich because we are not going to get above 3,000 feet, so there's no need to be trimming the fuel back, or leaning the fuel out during the circuit. Although you can, the pilot operating handbook doesn't object to it, it's just that most pilots wouldn't. Okay, off the parking brake, no flaps, full mixture, full rich mixture, and we'll accelerate down the runway. So the aeroplane is already configured for flight. I taxied out before I started recording, so I didn't waste your time with that part of it. So we're using the rudder and nose wheel to maintain the centre line on the runway. We're waiting to get to about 50 knots, and then we begin gently rotating, and we're in the air pretty quickly. So we climb out, we hold 240 degrees until we get to the edge of the airfield. So you can see that's happening down here. And as we cross the boundary of the airfield, we turn left to 230 degrees. And we will hold 230 degrees now for some time. So if we look out as we climb out, we're coming out to 1,000 feet, so the airfield's at 500 feet, so to get 1,000 feet above airfield elevation we need to get to 1,500 feet, which we are doing, and we're climbing at about 70 knots. So anything from 60 or 55 upwards is fine as far as the pilot operating handbook for the 152 says. So we're maintaining 230 degrees, and we're looking, there's this valley that we're going to need to fly along, so if we keep an eye out over the right wing we can sit down in the aircraft while we're doing this. So maintaining 230, what we're looking for is for this town to be alongside our wing, and then we can start turning, and you can see the obelisk off in the distance that we're going to use as a reference point. So we're just up to 1,500 feet, so we'll level out and we'll come back to an appropriate engine setting. So Are we alongside the town? We just about are, so we're going to begin our turn. So standard turn, so we align the bank indicator on the turn coordinator, and we manage the speed. What are we doing on revs? Revs are perfect for cruise. So we're just coming round towards 330 degrees. So you're going to line up about a third of the way between the road and the obelisk for a perfect, or from what I've seen so far, for a perfect kind of alignment. And then as we fly along, there's this road that sweeps along. We want to orient ourselves with it. So I'm just trimming us out a little bit, so I don't have to keep putting pressure on the stick. And if we sit up in the cockpit, you can see there's a field here with some trees in it. As soon as that goes past the pillar, it's a really good point to turn. It's just another visual reference point you can use, as well as knowing that as you approach this curve in the road. So we're starting to see the trees, so we'll begin our left turn. So again, we're putting the bank angle on the turn coordinator in place. We're climbing a little, which is a well-known thing that happens as soon as you start turning. It's a common student mistake that you end up doing a climbing turn by accident. So we're turning for 60 degrees, so it's just coming up now. And you can see in the distance there's the end of a hill here, and then there's a blank patch. So we're aiming kind of for there, just to the right of the hill. So again, we've gained 100 feet during that turn, which, as we said, can be an issue, so we're just dropping the revs a little. And trimming the aircraft ever so gently. So as we come up to this road into High Wycombe, we are going to turn to just miss the road and turn towards the industrial estate. So a good reference point for that is when you see the building on the hill here called West Wycombe. It's where the Hellfire Caves are, underneath it in the hill. When we see that in the window at the side of the aircraft, it's a good reference point to make our turn, to then avoid the road and head off towards the industrial estate. So on the approach for runway 24, we do cross the industrial estate. If you're climbing out from 06, the reciprocal runway, you actually turn before you get to the industrial estate on your climb out. So if we look down the side of the aircraft now, we've strayed a little bit to the right, but we can correct that. So you will see there's a church, and there's a building that's not actually modelled very well on top. So there's the church, and then there's a bigger building. So we will begin our pattern turn. So we're just going to avoid this main road, staying over the fields. And we're looking to decelerate now as we turn. And we're trying to get within the speed range to use flaps. So we've just done that now. So we drop the flaps a couple of notches, and we'll be using them as we drop down. We're doing 150 degrees now, so we fall down towards the industrial estate. And if we look out sideways, you can see the airfield is behind the pillar at the moment, but it will come into view very soon. So we're looking to drop to 1,000 feet, which will be 500 feet over the ground. So as we fly in, so there's the airfield, and you'll be able to see the VASI lights in a moment. So there they are. So we begin our turn towards the airfield. This will be a lot easier with a headset, it has to be said. So we're a little bit high according to the VASI lights, but we can always correct that. So we're going for full flaps now. And we can just use the throttle to correct our altitude over the glide path down. So we're just, there we go. So we've got a one red and one white VASI light now, meaning we're on the correct approach path. and then we just use the throttle to balance the speed on the way down, just to make sure we don't get too slow. So 50 knots is perfect for a full flaps landing in the Cessna 152. So again, this is really just folding in lots of learning over the last day or so of how to operate at this specific airfield in this specific aeroplane. Okay, so we come in over the apron, cut the throttle to 0, we flare out, let the aircraft settle onto its wheels, there we go. So full throttle again, lift the flaps, wait for 50 knots, gently rotate, and we're back in the air. Sit up in the seat so we can see what we're doing. So we're looking for the edge of the airfield again. At 65 knots is fine for the climb out, so we're just crossing the edge of the airfield, turn to 230 degrees, level back up again, and maintain this, use attitude to maintain speed on the climb out. So we're looking for 1500 feet for the circuit, and we're also looking for the valley down here. So we're looking for the town off of our right wing that we will turn right when we are alongside. If you see in the distance, you'll see the obelisk. Turned a little bit too far. I'm just trying to balance too many jobs here, which is always a problem. So there's the town we are going to look to circle. There's the obelisk, so we're going to fly along this valley, remember. So we're just coming up to 1500 feet. So we cut the throttle back for the cruise. So we keep an eye on the rev counter over there. We don't want to cut the throttle back too much. So we'll begin our turn around the edge of the town. So we're avoiding the noise abatement area that we're not allowed to enter. It's basically there's some very, very wealthy villages. That's the reason we are staying out of that area. So again, if you remember, we're going to fly this track along here between the road and the obelisk with this field that we'll use as a turning reference. So we'll sit up in our seat so we can see that as we get closer. We're just about the right altitude. Revs are looking good. Aircraft configuration is looking good. So I'm just going to trim out the elevators so I don't have to put any more pressure on the stick. There we go. Oh, it's giving it a bit too much. We were just climbing gently. So I'm just dialing that back out. Okay, so over to our side are the towns that we're not allowed to fly over because we're not allowed to create too much noise. So if you remember, as soon as we see the trees down here, we can begin our right turn to 60 degrees. So we just aligned the wing again on the turn coordinator. And again, we're climbing again, look, it's such a common thing to do. So we're just adjusting for that as we turn towards 60 degrees. So we can see there's our reference point in the distance at the bottom of the hill. So we're just coming up to 60 degrees. Looking good on revs. Looking good on compass direction. Looking good on where we are over the ground. So again, there's this road. We have to turn just before the road, so we use seeing the building at the side of the aircraft as our reference point. So we'll go and have a look at little nav map afterwards to see how accurately we flew the pattern. Obviously, practice makes perfect, and this is such a specific pattern. It's a really nice one to practice with because you have to use the visual reference point, or visual reference points. The actual there's a leaflet available from the airfield itself which goes into quite some detail with numbered points all the way around the route for things to look for. Okay, so we should see the building on the hill any moment. It's a great day out actually visiting the Hellfire Caves. The secret society used to meet there. Okay, there's the building, so we turn right. So we align the wing on the turn coordinator and we're turning towards the industrial estate, and we're starting to lose some speed now to get the flaps down, which we are just about able to do at 85 knots. Here comes 150 degrees on the compass, which is the base leg. So then down come the flaps and we start descending further. You can see the airfield just disappearing behind the pillar over there. So we just touch on the corner of these buildings as we turn in. So we're just coming down towards 1,000 feet. The aim is to be at 500 feet above the ground at the point you turn onto finals, or the point you come out of that turn onto finals. So we've done it a little bit early here. VASI lights are looking better this time. We've got one red and one white immediately, so we came in a little bit lower than last time, so orientation with the runway is looking a little bit better. Again, so you're looking about 55-60 knots with full flaps for landing, which we're just about on the money. Looking at the VASI lights for our vertical position. About 1900 RPM is usually quoted, and that's exactly where we are at the moment for the approach. Whoa, stutter from the simulator. That wasn't helpful. Then obviously as you come in over the field, you can cut back to idle and just flare the aircraft out onto the runway. Okay, so there you go, a more correct circuit of Wycombe Air Park from runway 24. So we're going to raise the flaps, roll long. It says in the pilot operating handbook, if the runway is long enough, just let the aircraft roll and use the brakes the minimum amount, which you can say we're going to be able to get away with here. Also, some other feedback I saw from a real-world pilot that commented on previous video: when you're on the grass, always hold back pressure on the stick to take the pressure off of the nose wheel, so I'm going to do that this time. I should have left the yoke in place, shouldn't I, so you could see what I was doing. But so we're holding some back pressure as we taxi back. Let's have a look from outside. It's a nice looking little aeroplane, isn't it, the 152? Okay, so this was more of a functional demonstration really, or practice, so I'm not going to bother taking you around, you know, parking the aeroplane and shutting everything down. There's not really much value in watching that again and again and again on every single video, so I'm going to stop recording here and hopefully I'll see you again soon. Okay, I wonder what we'll be doing next. Maybe some spins. I'll have to go and read the student training book, but yeah, I think we may be looking at stalls and powered exits from stalls and all that kind of stuff, so it's going to be good fun. Okay, I'll see you again soon.